I'm going to make comments on the Krashen video. I'm somewhat of a, actually, I don't like Krashen as a person, what I've heard. I think that he is probably pretty solid in terms of his statements. This is based on my experience so a few years. I'm still a youngster. I would say, and I really like the idea of having you email back your impressions of Krashen. That way, if we agree or if I just see something interesting, I can comment on it. So, of course, he focuses on acquiring a language, and historically, to be presenting to you at some point this semester the history of how people have taught language, mainly because you'll not want to go down that route. A lot of people have made, it's like the pioneers going west. Some of them, like the Honor Party, ended up going over the mountains and ended up going to dinner party, and they were the dinner. So you want to go places where you can successfully get through. He talks about how we acquire a language, and he does it in a nice way, so it makes reasonable sense that we could acquire language by going to French-speaking or whatever country you want to go to, China. But it's better if we have some deliberate understanding, some basic. We have a basis, so when we get there, we can actually use what we know and then build on it. Essentially, he's saying that for language learners need some kind of and they're small children, it will get countless amounts of repetition before they have to produce a thing. That's the silent period, by the way. I read somebody's email or somebody's paper, and they were talking about how they didn't learn their mother's language. I think I know this, but silent period is very unnerving. It would be like going to Spanish class and you speak Spanish to students and they don't respond for like a month. And so you're assuming you're not doing anything because they're not producing anything. The fact is that the brain is systematically trying to work out what is going on. And if you give them a context and meaningful content, they're able to do that. But still, it takes a while. Krashen gives examples. He had one little girl. I don't think that this was in this video. It was in another one that I can't access right now. He kept talking to a little girl, and every morning he would say hello or something to her. And he finally, after talking to her for about three months, he thought, well, I guess nothing's happening. And then finally she kind of blurted out an obscenity to him. And he realized, oh my gosh, she does understand. Didn't respond appropriately, but a lot of stuff's been going on. We know that kids learn a lot more and can listen and understand far more than actually can speak. So if your mother or some relatives spoke to you in Portuguese, you would have actually learned quite a bit of Portuguese. Maybe you weren't able to respond. So you do acquire a language. And one thing that he mentions in there, I think he says this, is that the way you acquire a language is not through work and worksheets and memorization. Yes, you'll get some language, but it won't stick with you because it was like being force-fed. You can imagine, say, I want to eat something very delicious, and they say, no, we're going to feed you down a tube, or we're going to feed you Spam every day. Yes, you'll get the energy out of it, but you'll say, I hate eating, okay? That's why language learning has to be positive. That's why also reading has to be positive. If the reading experience is negative, why would you read when you have a chance on your own? I like to play baseball as a kid. And I would go out and play baseball, bounce the ball off the house, or if I could get some neighborhood kids just to play baseball, go out and get gravel and get some gloves. And I would use a board or something and shape it like a bat so I could hit just rocks and pretend hitting home runs at Yankee Stadium. It was fun, so I would do it. But it actually wasn't very pleasant because it was hard on my hands, and hitting rocks is really kind of painful. especially if you get a big rock and a small stick. Talk about vibrations. So experience is unpleasant. You're not going to persist in it, whether it's reading or learning a language or speaking a language. The whole thing is just irritating. Grammar is an internal thing. The actual teaching grammar rules, as he points out, used to love to use English handbooks. We don't really have those as much anymore, although you can find them. But they used to have handbooks. It was like an operator's manual for writing. And you could look up the thing. Like, well, here's the rule on using different from and different than. I just happened to read those in the dictionary. And it turns out saying different to is British. But we normally different from or different than. And after you say different than, like walking to the park is different than walking to school. If there's a little clause after it with a verb, then you're supposed to use than. Well, those are the rules. But in fact, you probably didn't know that. You may probably say, well, I always say different too. And technically, the British, or it can be used in English, but it's just standard American English. But it all depends on what the common usage is. Grammar changes as the language changes. A lot of people think grammar is like a rule book and it never changed. Well, it does. Vocabulary change, language change. That's why we don't speak like Romeo and Juliet. And I can't even say where is started thou. If I start out that way, people are going to wonder, where's the art class? So Krashen gives us very practical, and he bases it on research that they had done. I'm sure you can find stuff about Krashen where people criticize it. Okay, but I'm not trying to give you a history of linguistic analysis. That's not what. I've been reading your papers, read your emails, and your culture maps. Very eager, and so I've decided that I'm going to be throwing some of the videos at you with new ideas, because I want to jam a lot of things into the old, thinking of the old sausage maker. There's a lot of stuff in the sausage. Some of it you use, some of it you don't, but people are going to get it. And so I'm going to cram in a lot of stuff. What mentioned the word silent period. You'll see that number 5 on here. Affective filter. Now, I hope you understand what that is. For example, right now you're listening. If you saying that Dr. Tracy's wearing this shirt, Bazinga, and I think he's a little nuts, and I really don't like listening to him talk. That means people always knock. I have a sign on the door, recording. Please don't come in, and people don't see it. Okay. Affective filter. Affective filter is when you shut down. You literally, it's not really so much a filter as it's much a barrier. Now, filters are to let the right thing in, but affective filter means you're blocking. And I don't even know if that's the right term, but whatever we want to use the term, it's when you're not interested, you're not listening. That's it. Okay. You feel the way about me right now, you would probably be looking at television, wondering what I'm waving about. Now, affective filter also deals with how welcoming school is. If your school is very pleasant, then your affective filter is going to be lower. It's going to be less of a barrier. I have to check on something. I'm going to stop this for just a sec. Okay, I get to go get pizza, so I had to delay myself. Anyhow, so I mentioned the affective filter. That's why a lot of times in my class we have popcorn and things in my face-to-face class. Wouldn't it be great if we could have pizza and stuff online? I don't think it would be help, but it would be great. The old deal, number 7, grammatically based language instruction. I know you have a lot of experience learning a language. Some of you from a relative, and some of you or all of you've had a Spanish or a French class or something, and people would say drill, drill, drill. And you have this image of German soldiers in Prussia drill back and forth, and people walking in unison, and maybe the Marines and drill. And people used to saying, well, they have to step a certain language is not like that, because you do not drill when you speak a language. You look at content and meaning, and then the words come in as you need them. Okay, but the old audiolingual method, which is a little bit of an expansion on the old-fashioned drill, they used to do Latin this way. If you've ever seen the movie Dead Poets Society with Robin Williams, great movie. There's a clip in there. It shows people teaching, and the man's teaching Latin, and he said, "Agricola, agricolas," word for agriculture, but it actually was a verb in Latin. And everybody in the class, agricola, agricolist, agricolo, agriculum, repeat. And then he does it again, and all this. And that's why Latin's a dead language. You never tell. There's no stand-up in Latin. Latin has been since probably, I would say, about 400 A.D. Last guy got invaded by the Goths, and all the jokes were in German. So drilling is no good in the audiolingual method that they used after World War II to teach large numbers of people basic Chinese or Vietnamese or Russian or whatever they wanted. They had to mass people. They didn't have time to have innovative, interesting interaction. They wanted to say, we got these audio tapes, we'll play tapes, you're going to listen to them, you're going to memorize 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And they got a certain level of competence, but they weren't fluent. But they wanted to get them where they could say, hold up your hands, I am your friend, I surrender, what you wanted to know. No, I don't. So that came from the drill. And that was the old slot thing where you would say, okay, yo soy Glenn. I'm Glenn. And I'd say, tú eres, and then you would say, tú eres, and I would say, tú eres, you are, whoever you are, Michelle or something. And then, ustedes, you all, or you, the plural you is you all. The Southerners use that I use it. You all, ustedes son estudiantes. You are students. Soy estudiante. Tú eres estudiante. Ustedes son estudiantes. Somos, we are estudiantes. That it changes in Spanish. We say we, he is, I am, they are. We just have 3 versions. Okay, that is a way to teach, okay? And I'm sure some of you learned Spanish way. I had some with my very good Spanish teacher in high school. We were encouraged to use it creatively. We didn't just drilled a little bit, but then once we had the idea, we applied it quickly. He also brings up a couple of other things, and I'm going to add to it. Free voluntary reading. He's a huge advocate. And you see a lot of his stuff. It's about how, and I know this, I read comic books as a little kid, I was this guy. I was like Sheldon, not that smart, not that bizarre, very common person, okay. But you can tell that I read comic books. I love Superman. I was not a big fan of Batman, but you know what? I should have some of those Spider comics from 1961, since that was the first one. But who knew, right? Free voluntary reading. I love to read comics, and I love to read books about science fiction. So if I had that kind of stuff, I was great. And then I'd go to school, and they get the base reader. And everybody got the same book with the same stories. And the only alternative to that was sometimes you get graded reads like If you're in fourth grade reading in a second level, you get these books, the blue ones, and then green ones for third, red one fourth, purple ones for fifth, pink ones for sixth, whatever. And you read at these levels. But the problem is the material was not very exciting. It was more focused on the word count and the vocabulary and the length of the letters. They were not interested in it's good stuff, because I remember so many things I read and I said, oh, well, I passed the test and I'm good at passing tests, but I had no incentive to read these. These basal readers could not sell as a bestseller anywhere. So that's the key. You want to have things that kids like to read. One example I had, a kid in Lexington that wouldn't read. I found a book. It was about Hispanic, probably Mexican individuals in Los Angeles in the 1940s or 50s when they were forming, and I will use the word gang, but it was probably not in a harsh sense that you think of now, like movies, but it was more their group or something. And the name of the book was Don't Spit on My Corner. And it had some words in it that were normally not good words for high school students. Not that they had heard them 1,000 times. But that kid read the book in one day. Read the entire book. He didn't read anything, but he read that book. That was quite an achievement. I didn't have a lot of other books like it. But if I could get him reading that book, you can't pressure somebody to eat and enjoy food, and you can't pressure them to read a book, read it when they don't have to. And he obviously read it when he didn't have to. He read it in that day. So free voluntary reading is huge. Why are some teaching approaches unsuccessful? I got to get this because I didn't read the bottom. First of all, I think you have to realize if you get kids in your class that can't read in their own language, don't know what reading is, you can't just get them excited about a book in English because they don't have the vocabulary background. You're going to have to bridge to that. First of all, there's a real problem in having kids carry a book that looks like a grader's book in sixth grade. They don't want to be seen with that book. Okay. Dr. Seuss is not cool to read when you're in sixth grade. You have to spend a lot of time looking for material that fits through. Now, I've got a lot of books here. I'm not going to pull them out and show you now. I don't want this video to run that long. But finding material that is culturally sensitive, I say sensitive, it has to have something they connect with. All right? You can't read the Babysitter's Club if you're, I mean, you could, theoretically. But if like a fourth grade boy wants to read about motorcycles and cars, now that's stereotyping a fourth grade boy. That's probably what, maybe they don't know. Maybe they like the Babysitter's Club. You have to throw a lot of things out to see what they like. Okay. I keep comparing it to eating, because if you like a food, it doesn't matter how much you try to convince people they should eat it. Same thing with reading. A level of enthusiasm is very important too. I'm also a believer in sometimes bridging it with movies. Although I know some of my kids, my family, would not read something, would say, let's watch the movie. So it's like John Seinfeld. He wanted to read. He was really interested in the club he was in. He was trying to date a girl, and he says, they're reading Breakfast at Tiffany's. He said, well, I'll just watch a book. I'll watch the movie, and then I'll think like I read the book. Well, the movies are going to be the book. So a lot of things would be missing. Movies are very good at interpreting. So anyhow, I just want to share with you this about some of the things in Krashen. I look forward to reading your emails. And this is this week's lesson, and just tidying Krashen, but I think it'd be interesting.